Hi, this is J Patterson, and we're in the middle of doing a tutorial for making Reversi as a web application using a bunch of web technologies like Node.js and HTML and Bootstrap and stuff like that. Right now, what we're in the middle of is setting up our game board so that we can place tokens on the board. We've been able to set up a message so that the server can send updates about the board to the client. And in this video, what we want to do is two things. We want to enable our server to assign colors to the players, and we want to give the player the ability to play tokens. All right, so let's tackle that color bit first. There's a lot of technical code in this video, so let's take it step by step. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to try and augment our server so that it assigns colors to players. We'll do that in server.js. So let's go to Visual Studio Code. In server.js, the place where we need our colors to be assigned is in send game update. And so in send game update, what we're going to do is we're going to take these notes that we've left for ourselves. So this check to see if a game with a game ID exists. We've already done that, so we can clean that up. What we're going to tackle now is these next two items. We're going to check to make sure that only two people in the room and then assign the color to those players. We've already sent the game update, and later on we're going to check to see if the game is over. Okay. To do this, we need to see everyone that's currently in the room. And so we're going to ask the socket.io library to tell us everyone that's currently in the room in the root namespace. So use a slash, quote, slash. Everyone that's in the root namespace and everyone that is in the room that is currently being played for the game. We want to get all the sockets that are there. And when we get them back, we are going to run a function that looks at all the sockets. All right. Now we have to do a bunch of things when we're looking through these sockets that are being returned back to us. But one thing we need to do is we need to move this next piece, this send game update, into the result of this asking for all sockets. So we don't want to run it automatically. We want to take it and we want to cut it, and we want to put it inside this method so that it's indented like that. That'll be the last thing we do after we evaluate everything. We'll send the game update. Once we get our sockets back, let's go ahead and change this to sockets. Again, my goal here is to get no bugs. Let's see if we can pull it off. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. I'm going to sneeze again. Pro teachers can turn off the video when they're sneezing. All right, so we're going to go through each one of our sockets, and what we want to do is we want to walk through them one at a time. And so we need an iterator, which is something that will loop over them. And so we're going to get the sockets iterator from that set. Iterator. Let's not get any typos. Symbol iterator. Okay. And then we want to see if there is more than one person in the room, which we hope there should be because we are one of them. So if it's greater than or equal to 1, we're going to work with our first player that's already in the room to make sure that they have a color. And let's get them. We'll assign them the socket ID, which is present in sockets the iterator.next.value. That'll be the first socket ID that's in this set of sockets that we get back. And what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if games subgame underscore ID square dot player underscore white dot socket is not equal to first. All right, so if the game that we're currently looking at, if this first player is not white and this player, the black player for this game, is not first, then we know that player does not have a color yet. So now that they don't have a color, we have to figure out if there's a spot for them, meaning that they're one of the first two players in the game, or if they're a third player and they need to be kicked out. So let's check to see if they could be white. All right, so we're going to grab this here and we're going to say if games.player.socket triple equals the empty string, not a space, just 2 double quotes. That means that the white player has not been assigned. Get this single quote at the beginning. All right, and if that's the true, then this player should be white. And let's announce that. White is assigned to concatenate first. All right. Now let's go ahead and actually assign them. So I'm gonna grab that code there and now say games gameid.player.whiteSocket equals first. And we also need to set the username. And the username is going to be players game ID.first. All right. Players game ID. No, players first dot username. There we go. Yeah, that works okay. All right, so if the white player has already been taken, then we'll add an else statement and say, well, if the black socket is the empty string, then this player should be black. And we will assign black to first. And we will say player._black.socket equals first, and then player.black.username is first. All right. And then finally, if neither the white nor the black is available, then we've got a problem because this player is the third player in the room. And so this player should be kicked out. And so we can kick them out by, let's log that first. Kicking first out of game ID. All right, and then let's actually do the kicking out. So we'll tell socket.io, all the people that are in the room that has the name of this socket, we are going to tell them to leave all the rooms that have the name game ID. And I have to do a square bracket and a parenthesis there. All right, that will kick them out. Right, and let's make sure let's make sure we got all our brackets lined up here. Good. That should be a curly bracket. And there's a curly bracket. All right, now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to grab everything from if sockets.size greater than or equal to 0. We're going to copy that, and we're going to put it right after that. And we're now going to say if sockets.size is greater than or equal to 2, then we're going to get the next element in our list. We're going to call it second, and we're going to check to see if second hasn't been assigned anyone. So if second doesn't have a color, then we are going to see if the white has nothing, and then that player should be white. And so we'll assign that white to that player, and then the socket will be the second, and players.second.username. And if the black is empty, then the player should be black. We'll assign them black and get their username. And then if the player should be kicked out, then we will kick second out of the game and make second sockets leave. So all the firsts and seconds. All right, so that will assign the color. And then I'm looking around for where did my other code go? There it is. Oh gosh, this got sucked up. All right, so let's see. We want that code to come after this if statement. Let me just check. Yep. All right, so here's our if statement. If sockets is greater than or equal to 1, come on down. If sockets is greater than or equal to 2, come on down. And then we want our new code to be in here. We want send game update to be there, indented. And then let's see if this matches right. Great. That looks good. Curly bracket and parenthesis. and then we have yet to check if the game is over. All right, so that will assign the color to our player. Let's run it and make sure we haven't made any typos in it. So I'm going to go to our run, and I'm going to run and debug. Hit run. Okay, looks good. So I'm going to stop it there. All right. What I'd like to do now is to see if we're actually getting that information. So when we get a game update, are we being assigned a color? The way we're going to do that is by having main look to see if they have that, go into main, see if ask the client if they've actually seen their color. Okay, so let's add that in main.js. All right, so main.js, when we get a board update, here under in game update, when we get the game update back, we want to update my color. This was a placeholder that we had before. And so what we're going to do is we're going to check to see, well, let's see, actually, just like we have to keep track of our board, we have to keep track of what our color is. So under let old board, let's add a new color. Let my color, and that's going to initially be equal to the empty string. So just 2 double quotes together. So we'll start with no color, and then we'll update our color, and we're going to ask, we're going to find out by looking at the payload that came back. So we're going to say if our socket ID, the one that we're currently working with, is triple equal to payload.game.player_white.socket. So if our socket ID matches the white player socket, then my color is going to be equal to the string white. All right, and we're going to copy that and put an else in front of it. Otherwise, if we're equal to the black socket, then my color is going to be equal to black. And otherwise, we've got some kind of problem because we are neither white nor black, but we're in the game. So if that's the case, then I don't know, let's change our location, because we really shouldn't be in the room if other people are white and black and we're not either of them. So window.location.href, send us back to the lobby, equals lobby.html colon or question mark username equals single quote plus username, and that will then return after that, and that will kick us back to the lobby if we shouldn't be in this room. Looking at that for a second. Okay, and now to see that we've actually gotten the right thing, let's update our document object model with this information. So we're going to search in the document object model for that element that has the ID myColor, which we set up a couple videos ago, and we are going to replace the HTML there with the string, and we'll use single quote h3, and we will say give that ID equal myColor, because ID equal double quote my color, because we're about to replace it, double quote angle bracket I am space single quote plus my color plus single quote, and then close the h3 tag, single quote and semicolon, and all the colors should line up if we did this right. All right, save that. Now running this should be enough that we should see that the game assigns us a color when we join. So let's see if that works. Let's run our server. Okay, we're running cleanly. Let's come over to our game board. Let's reload. And reload, and let's join. And let's join. Let's play a game. Let's play a game. I am white and I am black. Great. Our players are being assigned colors cleanly, and we have a board and we have chat room working. Now let's add the functionality to be able to play with our tokens. All right. Let's set up interactivity on the cells in our game board. To set up interactivity on the cells of our game board, we're going to go to main.js, and we're going to scroll down to where we adjust and animate our game board. So down here, where am I right now? I'm in the game update panel. I'm down here where we animate changes to the board in this double loop that goes rows and columns. We look to see if there's a change, and if there's a change, we come down here and we assign the appropriate graphic. then we update the graphic. All right, after we've done that, after we've gone through and assigned the graphic, what we want to do to that same column is we want to add the interactivity. So the first thing I'm going to do is copy that line, and I'm going to use the same selector there that we had before. And I'm going to turn off all interactivity on that board square. I'm going to turn it off so we have a clean slate and we can add the interactivity that we want next. If it's a space, then we're going to allow the player to play. You don't play on a square that already has a token. So if the board row and column triple equals a space, then we're going to add our interactivity. The first thing that I want to do is I want to get some interactivity, which is to add a class. I want to add a class to the document object model so that we can have our hover effect. So I'm going to add class, and the class I'm going to add is called hovered over. Now we don't have any styling in our CSS for a class called hovered over, but we're going to add that in a moment so that we can see where we can interact with our board. Actually, why don't we do that first? We'll go ahead and just leave this here for a second. Let's go add some interactivity to our game.css by going into game.css. And let's add some styling for any cells that have the class hovered over and while you are actually hovering over it. That's the pseudo class with the colon. And what we want to do is we want to say the background image is going to be the URL, and we put a slash, initial slash, because we want to start the root of our hierarchy, and it's going to be assets, images, hover.gif. So anytime we see that class and we hover over it, we will put our hover icon. Let's restart our server. Let's come back to our board. Let's go back and walk through our sequence again. Enter our lobby, invite, and play. Oh, we got something broke. Let's see what broke. I don't see anything broken in the server.js. I'm looking in the inspect tab. It says that click is not defined on main 346. So let's see, 346. Click is not defined. What did I do wrong? Have to turn off something there. Oh, I'm sorry, that should be in quotes. That's a string, not a variable. All right, that's main.js, so let's go back. Okay, and reset our client and try again. Great, there's our game board. And now you see we get the hover effect only over those elements that are empty, and it should work on both sides once the window is in focus. Great, but now there's no clicking, so we want to be able to, or I'm trying to click. We're going to add the functionality for clicking now. All right, so after we add the hover class, now what we need to do is we need to attach a function to each one of those elements, a function that gets run when you click on it. To do this, we're going to use something called a closure. This is really advanced JavaScript, and there's some resources online that you can take a look at for more details. I'm going to go ahead and just use it though, and you can see it for the first time or investigate it more, however you're so inclined. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the same selector that we had before. We're still going to be adding something to this cell. We're going to be adding something that happens when you click on this cell. All right, what is it that we're going to add when you click on this cell? We're going to add a function, and we're going to use the JavaScript 6 version of the function. So we're going to put in 1, 2, 3 open parentheses, a parameter R and a parameter C. And after that, we're just going to have 1 close parenthesis so far. We're going to use equal and greater than. So we're creating a function, an anonymous function. And the guts of that function are going to return another function. And that other function that we're going to return is also an anonymous function. And what that anonymous function is going to do is it's going to send a play token message to the server. So when you click on this cell, it's going to send a play token message to the server. So let's create that payload. It's an object. We're going to say what row we're playing on. It's going to be R. And what column we're playing on. That's going to be C. And then what color we are. And that's going to be my_color. Close that off with a curly bracket. That's our payload. And then let's just log that and say, I'm gonna grab this from another line. All right, I'm gonna drop console log message, client log message, sending play token command, and what we are sending is not a request, but the payload. All right, and then we're gonna go ahead and send it. So to send it, we are going to say socket.emit, the play token command, and the message that we're gonna send to the server is going to be our payload. Whew. All right, let's see. That is the end of the function that we're returning. That's the end of our return statement. That's the end of the function definition. And now we're going to create the closure by calling it with row and column. So 2 parentheses, row and column. That's the call. Then we're going to close the click. All right, so 2 close parentheses there. And then we'll close out our if statement. All right, let's see how we do. We're still off by 1. Okay, let me see here. That closes off our return. That closes off the anonymous function. That closes off the return. Let's see. That closes off the function. That closes off that. There we go. So that should have been a curly bracket and then a smooth bracket. Then we call it, and that's the end of our click. Great, that's the end of our if statement. If we are not a space, then we want to remove the class hovered over as well. So if the board is not a space, I'm going to grab this hovered over class. I'm going to put that in here. And rather than adding class hover over, we're going to remove that class. So after you play, the hover over effect will go away. All right. Visual Studio Code seems to think the syntax is okay. I'm looking carefully, just make sure I didn't make any mistakes that I can see. I don't see any. All right. Just like any time you have a signal from the client going to the server, we're going to get a response. And so we're going to have a play token response come back. And so let's go ahead and just have a handler that's going to handle that. So I'm going to come up here to a good template. So let's take our send chat message response, copy that. I'm going to bring that down below play token, but before our launch code here. And instead of it being a send chat message response, it's going to be a play token response. We're not actually going to do much here. We're just going to make sure it comes in okay, certain that it wasn't failed, and then that's kind of it. We're just going to write something placeholder there. Now our server doesn't take any action when we play our token, and so we need our server to handle our play token, update the board, and so on and so forth. All right, this is kind of this particular command, this play token command, has a lot of error checking on the server side. So let's go ahead and do that, and then that should be everything we need, although this is going to be quite a bit of error checking. All right, so we're going to open up server.js. We're going to scroll up from the bottom. We're going to write a new handler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the code for send chat message. I'm going to copy that, but just down to the bottom of send chat message there, not 456 there, just stop at send chat message. Before the close on 457, I'm going to paste it. So it's still within that socket connection block. I'm going to go to the top, and on the pasted code, I'm going to change it to play token. And now we're going to have to go through and do a bunch of error checking. So the server received a command. What did it receive? It received the play token command. And we're going to make sure that all the data looks okay. So the first thing to check is that the payload came in okay. Payload did not send a payload. And then what we are going to send back is our play token response with a failure message. If it didn't come in okay, response. And then we're going to say our play token command failed. We have about 5 of these we have to write. All right, so that checks our payload. Now we need to pull out a variable that we're going to need, and that's going to be our player, and we're going to pull that from our local data structure. We're going to look at players, and we're going to look at the socket.id, trying to get the player out of that. All right, so now we're going to change this checks. Instead of room, we're going to be checking see that player is okay. And client did not, let's see, play token came from an unregistered player. All right, I'm going to come up here and grab these 2 play token response lines and put them there and get rid of the send chat message responses. All right, that is good for our player and our player socket. Now let's go ahead and get our username. We've actually already got that there, so that's good. We're going to let our username equal players. Let's see, we can use player now, so we can just say player.username. And I'm going to come up here and grab these 2 lines, play token response, play token failed, and put them here. All right, so username, and we're going to say play token command did not come from a registered username. Okay, we need our username now. After our username, we need to get our game ID or our room. So I'm going to copy username there, and I'm going to place it here. And what I'm going to get is the game ID, and that's going to be player.room. And then we're going to change and check here. If the game ID is not defined or the game ID is null, then I'm going to get rid of these 2 send chat messages. We'll come up here, send them back, and the message we'll send is that, let's see, there was no valid game associated with the play token command. All right, that's our game ID, and now we need to pull off our row and column. So I'm going to copy this game ID bit. I'm going to put it down here. We're going to pull out the row that was played, that our token was played on, and so that's our payload.row. And make sure that that is defined and not null. There was no valid row associated with the play token command. Good. And then we're going to copy that. I'm going to get the column as well. Put that down below. Instead of row, I'm going to get column. Make sure it's not defined. Column. There's no valid column associated with it. All right, so we've got our row, we've got our column, and then the last thing we need to grab is we need to get our color from the payload. Put that down there. Let color equal payload color, and change column to color. Change column to color. Change column to color. All right. So now we have everything. Oh, no, the last thing we need is we need the actual game from our data structure. So last thing we'll get is we'll get our game, and we're going to pull that out from the games that we're keeping track of. Now that we have a valid room that's being played, game ID, and we need to change color to game. Game, there's no valid game associated with the play token command. All right. So the first thing that we can do is just by virtue of having all of that data come back, we can send back a successful response. So we'll let our response equal result success. So this is when we'll send back to our client that everything went okay. And we will say socket.emit play token response. And we'll send back our response. All right, so that'll tell the client that the message was received, and now we need to actually execute the move. Executing the move means that if the color triple equals white, then the game board row and column equals W, and game.whose turn switches to black. And we'll copy that and we'll put it down here and we'll say else if color equals black, then the token is black and the player's now's turn is white. Now you notice we're not doing any error checking here. We'll do error checking in a future video, but for now we're just allowing people to play generally. And then we'll use the function that we wrote, which is just to send a complete game update, and we'll send it to the socket, we'll send the game ID, and we'll send just the message that we played a token. We will delete this handle command that's left over from the send chat that we copied, and we will save it. And I think that's everything. I think that's all we need for our token to play. Like all we need. It was an awful lot. So let's restart our server. Make sure we start clean. Looks okay. Let's take our client back to the beginning. Client all the way back to the beginning. Have A join. Have B join. Have B invite A, have A invite B, restart our game. Everything loads up okay. We have I am white on the left, I am black on the right. Left side can now hover and hopefully click, play a token. Play white tokens, great. And you can see that they're showing up on both sides because the updates are being sent in. And if you play on the right side, you play the black token. You can't play on spots that already have a token, which is great, but there's also no rule taking to make sure that there's nothing like checking to see if things are flipping, et cetera, et cetera. So we're in good shape at this point. Yeah, I think that's what we need to cover this time around. A lot of careful code, but pretty satisfying result. We've got a board that we can play on, right? I think it's pretty good. Thanks for your attention.